pretty good. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my August wrap-up. I should have told you that I loved you one more time. As per usual, I'm going to start this video off with my reading stats, and in the month of August, I did manage to read 11 books. I read a total of 3,810 pages, and I read from authors from 4 different countries at least. There is one author that I read from that is completely anonymous, so I have no idea really any of my author stats. None of them will pertain to the author of this particular book because I don't know. I couldn't find out any information about them. But that being said, my page count also includes some of the pages that I read from Les Miserables, which I read about 375 pages of this month, and I have not yet completed it, but I am reading that as a part of Les Mis along. I'm behind. What else is new? But I just wanted to let you know that that's not counted in my total books or in any of my author stats, but it is included in my page count. As far as publication dates go, I did read one book published in the 19th century. I read one book published in the 1960s. I read one book published in 2006. One book published in 2015, 2 books published in 2018, 2 books published in 2019, 2 books published in 2020, and 1 book published in 2021. I did read from 5 male and 5 female authors, as well as the one author that I'm really not sure how they identify, because again, I could not find any information about them whatsoever. I read 2 young adult books, 9 adult books, and 0 middle grade books. I read from 2 BIPOC authors. I read 3 fantasy books, 2 contemporary/romance books, 3 mystery/mystery thriller books, 1 science fiction book, and 2 classics. As far as the type of book that I read, I did read 2 graphic novels, 1 essay collection, and the other, I guess that's 8 books, were full-length novels. I read 4 books off of my own TBR. I read 5 books physically. I listened to 3 books via audiobook, and I read 3 books on ebook. I had 0 1-stars this month, 1 2-star, 1 2.5 star, 2 3 stars, 5 4 stars, and 2 5 stars. My average star rating is 3.68, which is a little lower than last month, but I think that really is being dragged down by the 2 books that I really didn't care for. But without further ado, those are my stats, and now I'm just going to get into the books that I read. I did participate in 2 different readathons this month. They were both for the first 2 weeks of the month, and I did vlog both of them fully, so if you would like to hear my in-depth thoughts on, I think it's the first 7 books that I read, I will link those vlogs so you can watch them if you're interested, but I will just briefly touch on them here. And actually, the first book that I read this month was not a part of either of those. It's just a book that I finished, and that was Beach Read by Emily Henry, which is an adult contemporary romance book, and it follows 2 authors, Augustus and I can't remember the other one's name, but the female author is living on a beach property, it's on Lake Michigan or a lake in Michigan, and she's at a lake house trying to write, and she's having really bad writer's block. She typically writes romance, and then Augustus is her arch nemesis from undergrad, and he is renting the house next door or lives in the house next door or something like that, and he's having really bad writer's block too. He writes literary fiction, and so they decide they're going to swap genres and learn about each other's genres, and then they have a love story between them, obviously. This was really good. I gave it 4 stars. I understand why it's such a fan favorite. People really, really love this book. And I didn't love it as much as other people do, but it definitely is a very emotional book, and I like that it has a lot more going towards the plot than just being about the romance element, if that makes sense. There's a lot more going on in each of these characters' lives, which I found really interesting. But then I read Death in the Park by Lovett. This is the author that I couldn't find any information about. This book I got for free via Kindle Unlimited, and I actually didn't really buddy read it, but I kind of read it in a close proximity timeline to when my friend Amanda read it from her Pacific Northwest Washington life. I will link her Instagram down below. She's taking a break from YouTube this year, but she is posting on Instagram, and she is a part of the Jane Austen book club, so if you've been keeping up with any of that, then you've seen her around on my channel. But we both read this around the same time. I think she liked it more than I did. I don't know if cozy mysteries are my thing. I'll talk about this more in the vlog. This is the book that I gave 2 stars. I just ultimately wasn't a big fan of it, and I didn't feel like all the plot elements really meshed together very well. Another book that I read for the 2 readathons that I was participating in the first 2 weeks was Descender Volume 1, 10 Stars by Jeff Lemire, which I read, I think I got it for free using Amazon Prime or something like that. It's a graphic novel. It's the first volume in a graphic novel series, obviously that's volume 1, but it is a science fiction graphic novel about like a futuristic world where we have colonized other planets and we used androids to colonize them, but now something has gone wrong where the androids have revolted, and so being an android is illegal, and we're following an android who has just woken up after like 10 or 12 years of being in like a deep sleep because something has happened for him and to his like family. He's a companion android, so his like family was him and like a little boy that he was the companion to, and so he doesn't really understand why androids are illegal, and he's sort of going on this adventure to try to figure out what has happened to his family, what happened with the other androids, and then also who created the androids. It's this sort of like threefold problem. I loved this, and I would definitely consider carrying on in this series. I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. The next book that I read was The Pisces by Melissa Broder, which is kind of a contemporary with a fantasy twist. It's about this woman who is completing her PhD, and she is just ending this relationship that she's had for like 8 or 9 years. And so she goes to house sit for her sister in California just to sort of get away from her life and figure some stuff out for herself. And while she's in California, she meets a merman, and it's about their like love story, but it's also mostly about Lucy's thoughts and her life and what she's going to do with it, and if she's satisfied with the choices she's made so far. Ultimately, I gave this book 3 stars. If you want to hear more of my like complete thoughts, watch that vlog. But yeah, that book was like a roller coaster for me to read personally. But I am really glad I read it. So Brennan Dunaway, if you're watching this, thank you. I only picked that up because I saw your video on it. So I was pleased. Then I read One by One by Ruth Ware, which I actually ended up listening to as an audiobook. This is a closed circle mystery following a group of coworkers who are staying in this they're staying in the French Alps at a ski resort, and they get snowed in, and then they start dying off one by one, and you're trying to figure out who the killer is. This book was really suspenseful and very slow burn, and I actually ended up really, really liking it, but it did take me quite a while to get into, which is why I only gave it 4 stars instead of 5. But I thought it did such a good job at like building the intensity level. I do understand this book is not for everybody. I've heard some people have really like negative feelings on it. And I would say go into it thinking it's going to be like a slow burn mystery and not a thriller, and you'll have a better time with it. I then also listened to The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee, which is a like prequel novel to the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. This was the group read for Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is about Kyoshi, who is the Earth warrior avatar before Aang. I enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4 stars, maybe 3. Okay, yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I didn't hate it. I don't know that I will continue in it, just because I didn't really feel that attached to it. But also, maybe I will if I feel like it at some point. I don't know. Quick tea break. And the last book that I read for those vlogs, or for those readathons, was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, which I only give 2.5 stars. I was really disappointed by this book, y'all. So I have not yet read The Silent Patient. It's on my shelf right there, but I haven't read it yet. And I really was looking forward to reading it. And then after I read The Maidens, I was like, well, maybe I don't even want to read this at all. Maybe like I shouldn't have bought it. I don't know. But I've heard people say that they liked The Silent Patient a lot better. But The Maidens is sort of advertised as this dark academia thriller where you follow a therapist, Mariana, whose niece, Zoe, is at this college in Cambridge. I think the college is called Cambridge. I don't really know. I don't know much about how the British university system works. I'm sorry. But at her university, there's these group of girls that are referred to as the Maidens who are in this like special study group for this professor, Fosca. And one of the girls dies, and then more and more of the Maidens start dying. And so Mariana, I think kind of rightly, I don't know. It's iffy. I had a lot of thoughts about this in my vlog, so I'll link that for your perusal if you really care about how I felt about it. I also watched a live show that I'll link below that I think was on Perks of Being a Bookflower. I can't remember her channel, like what it is, but anyways, I'll link that down below too if you want to like watch a bunch of people talk about it, because I thought their discussion was really interesting and pretty good. And I actually just accidentally stumbled upon that, but I will link it if you've read The Maidens and you want like spoilery thoughts. That's a really good place to go. But I don't know, I just felt like it didn't really make sense. One of the plot twists I really hated. I didn't think that it like really delivered the dark academia that it promised, except for being set at Oxford. And also so many of the characters had such weird things about them that just weren't explained, and it was so that they would be red herrings, and I don't love that personally. So yes, I gave this 2.5 stars. I knew who the, like, killer or whatever was from the beginning, which it seems to be, like, mixed, but it just, like, I think the way, I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, but, like, the way I think about, like, when I'm watching horror movies or mysteries or thrillers or anything like that, my brain is very much like, you find the motive, and then you work back from there. Because typically things like this are kind of formulaic. In movies and books and shows, there's always like a reason for things to be the way that they are. And so if you can figure out what the reason is, you can trace it back. I don't know if that makes sense to other people. That's just like how my brain automatically does it. And that's like part of the fun for me of reading a mystery thriller, is being able to figure it out. So I don't mind. I should have said that. I don't mind that I knew who it was the whole time. I just wish there was a more interesting reason for it. Some people might have thought it was interesting. I just thought it was kind of bizarre. Okay, I'm just going to briefly go back through all of those and tell you what prompts I read them for. For the Enneagram readathon, I'm a 5, so I did those prompts. The Maidens was our group read. Then for the prompt Multiple Points of View, I read One by One by Ruth Ware. For female protagonists, I read Rise of Kyoshi. And for a mystery / a thriller, I read Death in the Park by Lovett. And then for my Avatar The Last Airbender readathon, I was on the water team because I'm a Scorpio, which is a water sign. That's the way I like thought about that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I did. The group read for that is Rise of Kyoshi by FCE. A book with a blue cover, I read The Pisces by Melissa Broder. I go into it in my vlogs if this is really blue or not. I called it blue, so we're going with it. For Moon on the cover or in the title, I went with Descender Volume 1 because it is a picture of a little android boy looking up at a moon on the cover. For a book with a sibling relationship, I read Death in the Park by Lovett because it does involve a lot of relationship between a woman and her sisters. In my opinion, that's the best part of the book, but anyways. And then for a book with a snowy or polar setting, I read One by One by Ruth Ware. All right, so now let's move into some of the books that I read not for those readathons. The first of which is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, which I believe I've said I was going to read since June. So I finally did it in August. Are you proud of me? I'm proud of me. I started this actually like the last couple of days of July and then couldn't keep going in it because I was in those 2 readathons. And so I have like, it took me like a month to read basically, but I ended up really loving this book. I did have a really hard time getting into it, which I'll get into here in a second, but I guess I should tell you what it's about. This is the first book in a fantasy trilogy in a world where the magic system revolves around metals. So if you can ingest certain metals and control their powers, then you're a misting. And most mistings can only control one metal or use one metal. And then if you can use all of the metals, then you are a Mistborn. And this book follows, as the title would suggest, a Mistborn. 2 actually, Kelsier? I was saying Kelsia, but I think it might be Kelsier. I don't really know. And Vin, who is a street urchin that Kelsier finds and is like, hey, I think you're a Mistborn, and he like tests her and takes her under his wing. So there's a whole found family element. But the other element of this is that they're trying to overthrow the like Dark Lord character who already won the big battle like 1,000 years ago. And so now it's these group of thieves and like underground street people, black market-esque types of characters trying to overthrow the power structure. I love this. It's obviously the first in trilogy. I'm reading the second one this month, September, and I'm really, really excited to continue in this series, and I'm so glad I finally picked it up. It did take me quite a while to get into, which is why I was able to take such a long break from it and not really, like, miss it, so to speak. But I think it'll be easier for me to read the second and third because there's not as much world building, there's not as much learning about the world and what's going on. I find that to be the hardest part of any fantasy, and I'm really not a high fantasy reader. If you've been around here, then you know, like, the fantasy that I like is mostly, like, light fantasy. So I'm excited to read this because it is definitely, like, it's been described to me as, like, a really good fantasy book to start with if you're not really used to reading high fantasy or, like, adult fantasy because of the way that Brandon Sanderson shows you the world. It's through Vin learning about all of it. So you are being taught, it's not really info dumpy, but it's like you are learning alongside Vin how things work, which is really helpful to people who aren't used to figuring out magic systems and the way worlds work. He also has like a whole back section that explains like what all of the metals do and like what the names for different people who can use different metals are. So like there's, what is that called? A glossary? There's like a glossary of terms or an index. I don't know which one of those is which. I'm not gonna lie to you. But anyways, I really liked that book. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. Then I read Emma by Jane Austen, and I'm reading all of Jane Austen's work also all of her full-length novels as a part of a book club with a group of other people in publication date order. So this was our 4th book. The live show will be on Sunday, which I don't know if this video is going up on Thursday or Sunday, but if it's on Sunday, then the live show is going to be today at 1 p.m. Central Time. You should definitely watch it if you're interested. And if you've read Emma and you would like to talk about it with us, because this is my favorite Jane Austen book that I've read. Spoiler alert, I absolutely love this, but I'm gonna forego going too far into detail. But this essentially follows the story of Emma Woodhouse, who is wealthy enough and like she's 21 years old and she's well off enough where she doesn't need to worry about getting married. And her father has health issues, so she doesn't feel like she can get married because she can't really leave, or she feels like she can't leave him because he would be depressed and might die, and she's worried about that. So she decides that instead of getting married herself, she's just gonna like entertain herself in other people's affairs, and she meddles around with all of her other, like all these other people she knows in her town and tries to matchmake them. And the reason she sort of wants to do this is because she fancies herself as a matchmaker after she introduces her governess to the man that her governess ends up marrying. And so she meets this new friend, Harriet, who nobody really knows very much about her parentage. She's got kind of a shady background. And all of this, of course, is happening in Regency England where things are very prim and proper. And that could be a big scandal for like a family with a lot of money. But Emma thinks that she can turn Harriet into enough of a lady that she can marry like up in society. And so it's just about like her misadventures trying to match Harriet up with people. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious, which is not something that I often think about with classics, but this book genuinely made me laugh out loud at parts. You can ask my boyfriend. He sat next to me and watched me laugh out loud about this. And I just loved the characters. I loved the ultimate like love story happening. I loved all of the like miscommunication. I loved the like really chatty neighbor Miss Bates character where there would just be page on page of run-on sentence of her just talking. I just thought it was hilarious. I loved it. And then I read my second graphic novel, Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, and I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars, I think? Yeah. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I thought it was super fun. It's just this like really cute YA contemporary graphic novel, and it follows these 2 characters, Deja and Josiah, who every year for September and October work at this pumpkin patch in their town, and this is their senior year of high school, which means it's their last year working at the pumpkin patch. And Josiah has always had a crush on the girl who works at the fudge shop, and Deja makes it her mission this year to get Josiah to actually talk to this girl. But of course, nothing goes as it should, and so they end up running all around the pumpkin patch. And it was super fun because there's this map at the beginning of it, and so you can like sort of, if you wanted, like follow around where they're running to, which I thought was super cute. Yes, very, very vibey, very fall. We loved it. I'm really glad I read this. It's not really fall here, but you know, it will be soon. And then the last thing that I read this month was The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, which I believe I've been trying to read for a couple months as well. This is just an essay collection. It's pretty short, and it's 2 essays written in the form of letters to James Baldwin's nephew 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. So as you can imagine, it talks a lot about how the Black experience has not really changed that much from the Emancipation Proclamation. It also talks a lot about race relations, where James Baldwin thinks we can go from here. It talks a lot about how race plays into the decisions people make in what religion to choose. Talks a lot about current events in the world at the time, and all kinds of stuff. I gave this 4 stars as well, and I did really enjoy it. I'm glad I read it, and I'm excited to read some of James Baldwin's novels. But that is going to be it for this wrap up. I feel like this is a kind of long video, so I apologize for that, but I tried to be as concise as I could with my thoughts. I don't think I was quite as concise as I could have been on some of them, but it is what it is. I am a talker. I am a Miss Bates. I don't know what else to say. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have read any of these books, please let me know in the comments down below what you thought about them, if you agree or disagree with any of the things that I said about them. If you would like to, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I do post 2 videos every single week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! I should have told you